You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYBC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening and welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WYBC. There's a lot of breaking news to get to today and a lot of things that are developing. So if you can bear with us, we'll dig right in without any further ado. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has officially referred several individuals in the Obama administration to the Department of Justice for possible criminal prosecution. That is not my analysis of the situation. That is according to the statements from the Director of National Intelligence Office. According to Gabbard's team, they have found, after a series of document reviews in complete conflict with the Durham report, you'll remember from 2023, that the Obama administration in December concluded that there was no direct interference impact from the Russian Federation through voting machines and widespread hackery in the 2016 election, especially in any market way that would cause Trump to be elected over Hillary Clinton due to Russian interference. So in idea, there was a real intelligence assessment that was brought up at a very specific off-the-books intelligence meeting over Russia on December 9th. Obama officials, senior Obama officials, by the way, including James Comey, met together. The new president of the United States, President Trump, was supposed to be briefed on this, by the way. He, in the transition period, is supposed to be brought in. He was not. He was kept in the dark until James Comey went to the Trump Tower in January of 2017 and told him a false story. Now, what does this mean? It means that the Obama administration made the choice after assessing that the Russian Federation did not change the outcome of the 2016 election. Essentially, they created a fake assessment. Someone in the Obama administration either ordered or approved a dishonest, they knew it was a dishonest intelligence assessment, and then fed that to the media, where the Washington Post then wrote, secret CIA assessment says Russia was trying to help Trump win the White House. The New York Times, Russian hackers acted to aid Trump in election, United States says. NBC News, U.S. officials, Putin personally involved in U.S. election hack. And it created all of the foundations that were necessary. And I mean all of the foundations that were necessary. Not just for the Mueller investigation and the complete grounding halt of executive actions in the Trump administration, but also created the strange system of internal resistance that would plague the Trump administration from the inside for the entire time that man was in office. Again, whether or not you like President Trump, whether or not you think that he's fair, whether or not you think that he is good for this country, or whether or not you think that what he has done in the past or the present is particularly legal, a separate institution in this country paid by the taxpayer under the authority of the U.S. Constitution, the rules, the precedents, the laws, and the procedures that are set forward in how these governments are supposed to operate, to create on the books fake intelligence assessments in order to suggest that the Russian Federation, against all available data, had directly acted to ensure that Donald Trump was the victor in the 2016 election, beating, at the time, Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton. It is a disgusting act that fits the objective definition of treason. This is treason. And by the way, there is no statute of limitations on federal treason. And yeah, there's a difference between federal and state treason, but that's really neither here nor there at the particular moment. That's just a little semantic game. Now, the Steele dossier, as we all know, has at this point been completely fabricated. But not only was it fabricated in how the Steele dossier was written and leaked to the media, the intelligence assessment that was supposedly the only saving grace of this particular dossier that would then be used for the Mueller investigation and then later on the impeachment stuff regarding Ukraine, it was all fake to begin with. It was all a politically motivated, illegally created, illegally disseminated intelligence report. On August 31st of 2016, the Department of Homeland Security said to the Director of National Intelligence Clapper, "We're working with the CIA on this particular threat. The thrust of the analysis is that there is no indication of a Russian threat to directly manipulate the actual vote count through cyber means. Lead author of the PDB on September 9th. We agree. Russia probably is not, in parentheticals, and will not try to influence the election by using cyber means to manipulate computer-enabled election infrastructure. On December the 7th, we assess that foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential election outcomes this year. We have no evidence of cyber manipulation of election infrastructure intended after the results. I will remind you that members of Congress on the Democratic side of the aisle tried to hold up the confirmation of the Electoral College votes. Remember when that was like the worst thing that Donald Trump ever did? Democrats were trying to hold this election up because they said Russia directly intervened. Former President Jimmy Carter went on stage in front of the public to make this assertion. There is no ifs, ands, or buts to this particular situation. These are direct smoking gun crimes of treason that were signed off on by the Obama administration, and it appears by the President of the United States at the time, Barack Hussein Obama himself. This December 9th meeting completely changed all of the standards for this intelligence report and ended up disseminating something that was completely counter to all of the prior investigations that all of the National Intelligence Services had in fact committed. So when someone looks at you and tells you that it is the Republicans' fault that institutional trust in this country has completely disintegrated, because Donald Trump cast aspersions and didn't really like things that were going on during his administration from the deep state. And then in 2020, he didn't like the outcome of that election. We have more information on that because a U.S. Postal Service report was just released. God forbid there be a slow news day. When someone tells you that the institutional trust collapse is Trump's fault, that is wrong. The Obama administration took all of the departments of justice and all of the national and international intelligence apparati and completely disregarded them, ignored them, and hid them, and put them behind classified walls. Information on foreign interference on elections typically is released to the American people a year or two after said election, if there is any that's involved. We saw it in 1978, or in the midterms in 1978. We saw it in the election in 1980. Those intelligence reports were released to the American people. At times, concerns about the Soviets in Cuba regarding elections in Florida. Since that point in time, the Obama administration went directly behind the president's back. And by directly going behind the president's back, Hillary Clinton then continued to tell the American people that the election was stolen from her at the hands of Russia. Someone who had all of the clearance, all of the access, period. It is. First of all, there are cases in which individuals from the Obama administration testified before Congress and swore under oath that the Russian government directly interfered, beyond just social media posts, interfered with said election. That's perjury by definition, by legality. And by the way, if you commit perjury on behalf of a political interest against American citizens that might be in favor of a foreign government, that's treason. That's treason. And whether or not the House does anything, whether or not the Department of Justice does anything, that is not for me to decide or for me to promise you, oh, there's going to be actions. But there has never before been a more definitive smoking gun than this particular situation. And by the way, the President of the United States, just to answer a few questions in the live stream chat, does not have presidential immunity. That's not a thing here. That's not a thing. It is not within the duties of the president to suppress intelligence investigations and disseminate false intelligence investigations against an American citizen. If we are in a time of war, or if there is a national security threat by an outside force, the president may disseminate false information as an act against another foreign power. The president does not have the authority to defame individuals through political means to what is, in essence, rig a presidential election. In this case, you could make the argument for the case of 2020. It depends on the transcripts from these particular meetings if they were recorded at all. Radio crew, we have to let you go to commercial. I'm going to keep it up with a few other details on this on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. According to a tweet from Director of National Intelligence, DNI Tulsi Gabbard, quote, Their goal, she meaning the Obama administration's goal, was to usurp President Trump and subvert the will of the American people. No matter how powerful, every person involved in this conspiracy must be investigated and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Remember, treason has no limit via the statute of limitations. The integrity of our democratic republic depends on it. We are turning over all documents to the DOJ for criminal referral. And according to document tracking services, you're going to see a lot of document tracking service confirmations on the show this evening. She has officially turned those documents over to the DOJ. This isn't oh yeah, those files are on my desk and we're going to get to it, that the Attorney General said. Gabbard has sent the read receipts for the emails have been sent through. Now the Department of Justice will presumably look through these documents and declare which individuals are likely to be brought forward for criminal investigation and prosecution. That's James Comey. By the way, this is why preemptive pardons are important. Preemptive pardons in this case are not constitutional. The preemptive pardon for Richard Nixon by Gerald Ford was not constitutional. And it is very, very, very good for Nixon that no one filed a lawsuit about some new crime that might have come out. If Nixon, pimp slapped a lady on Fifth Avenue during that time that he was pardoned for, that a new crime coming up. Preemptive pardons aren't constitutional. There is no local, state, or federal precedent, much less at the Supreme Court level, that suggests preemptive pardons are reliable. Which means this: even if Biden tried to slide Comey under some type of a large category pardon, he has no authority to do so, because there is no investigation into Comey committing this particular crime. And again, this also brings up individuals like Durham, the Durham report, which concluded in 2023, which told the American people none of this stuff that we're now finding from declassified documents from intelligence services, none of this stuff was real. It's either someone lied or someone lied at this point. You can't even claim ignorance for these particular situations. Now, for a bit of a sum up that I think is really worth looking at here, I do want to look at two documents. I'm going to try to get these pulled up here. So, according to a letter directly to the President of the United States that theoretically Obama read, he wrote, and I quote, "We assess that Russian and criminal actors did not impact recent U.S. election results by conducting malicious cyber activities against election infrastructure." Obama, theoretically, would have then relayed this to other members of the Department of Justice in his cabinet or the Department of Homeland Security if they had not already received this information, which again is very strange why in 2017, James Comey then goes to Trump Tower and essentially tells him, you're under investigation for collaborating with Russia to manipulate and meddle in the election process in the 2016 presidential election. And that would grind everything to a halt. Again, the reason the Trump administration has been, I'm sorry, I have to drop. We now have breaking news. Just a second here. We're going to tell Allison to bring everyone back from air. We'll have to wait for just a second here. Actually, it looks like we're going to be coming back on the radio clock. Forgive the unprofessionalism. We have to break yet another piece of news. This is why you don't say, I hope news breaks during the show.
I never hoped it. I just always expected.
I appreciate it. We were going to wait to break this with the radio crew here in 10 seconds. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Good evening. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast radio crew, as well as those on the live stream. We do have to start with a bit of breaking news. I'm sorry we don't have the Fox News breaking alert bell that normally goes on the radio side ready to go. That's how quickly this has broken. So regarding the Trump-Epstein situation, after the outrage from the American people and a lot of political officials that Pam Bondi did not release a lot of information in a what Americans considered was suitable for the situation. Not enough has been released. In fact, very little has been released regarding the Epstein case that was not already in the hands of the American public or accessible via those that went to Department of Justice websites. The Trump team finally announced, again, on July 17th, yesterday, quote, based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. He said the scam perpetrated by the Democrats should end and end right now. Here's the breaking news side of things. According to Attorney General Pam Bondi, just a couple of minutes ago, the Department of Justice has officially filed a motion requesting that the courts in the Southern District of New York release any and all jury testimony and ancillary evidences, not quite sure what that means in this particular case. The ancillary is an interesting legal term, regarding the Jeffrey Epstein case. So this now is in the hands of the U.S. court system to, again, likely deny the motion to unseal by the Attorney General's Office of the United States, because you get into the question of whether or not you release whether certain kinds of testimonies are considered credible, which are, which aren't. And there's certain to be a little bit of a legal battle here, given that the judges in the Southern District of New York are not exactly huge fans of the Trump administration. But again, the piece of breaking news, Attorney General Pam Bondi has officially filed a motion to ask the courts, including the Southern District of New York, to release grand jury testimony and other pertinent and, again, ancillary evidences. Again, interesting legal terminology there. As I'm not particularly an expert in what the ancillary terminology would mean, I'm going to leave that to perhaps the more shrewd experts. This is just from the president, just a couple of minutes ago. Breaking news, we've just filed a powerhouse lawsuit against everyone involved in publishing the false, malicious, defamatory, fake news article in the useless rag that is the Wall Street Journal. Okay, we will be getting into the Wall Street Journal situation in just a second. Regarding where the Epstein files are right now, though, it looks like, well, if you'll forgive me very, very, very briefly here for telling you that I was right in saying this is exactly what Donald Trump was going to ask for, I bring you from a couple of days ago why I suspect that President Trump is going to order Bondi to sling some more stuff out at the American people. So, in case you're wondering why you should continue watching this show, the real question here is what evidences there are, what ancillary testimonies, and I mean ancillary in the common vernacular sense at this point, not to be used in a courtroom, what accompanying files regarding Epstein, regarding affidavits, regarding any private concerns given to the FBI or to the NSA or to local police departments or to the U.S. Marshals, perhaps, that those law agencies keep on file that may or may not be credible. So, for example, if you were to call the FBI and say, I think Tony Kinnett is so good looking, it's illegal, they will keep that on file. Please don't call them and say that, because that is a waste of taxpayer dollars and time, but they do keep that on file. So if someone calls the FBI and alleges that Epstein stole cows in Kansas, they do keep that on file. So the question is, are they just going to release any kind of testimony, whether credible or not, to the American people? Who's going to offer that kind of discernment on the matter? One would hope that the Attorney General's office would provide that kind of guidance to the American people. But since the Attorney General's office botched the phase 1 rollout of the Epstein files back in February, now no one really trusts her office handling this. And it's a major issue. Now, the left side of the aisle in all of this is having their own kind of heyday. It's not really working out very well for them. And this boils down to a Wall Street Journal story. So the Wall Street Journal allegedly got in contact with the Trump administration a day or so ago. And Trump suggests that this is, maybe Rupert Murdoch who got a hold of him and said, there is this letter that we have that Donald Trump supposedly sent Jeffrey Epstein via Ghislaine Maxwell, who was coordinating his 50th birthday party. And Donald Trump sent some spicy, scurrilous language to Jeffrey Epstein that apparently is stuff the president, would say, and then included a crude sketch of a naked lady. Again, this is according to the Wall Street Journal. And they are alleging that this is brand new information, that Donald Trump drew a lady with big boobs and then signed his name to imitate, I guess, signed his name in a fashion that suggested it was the naked lady's pubic hair, and also wrote some kind of a poem conversation to Jeffrey Epstein as well, where Donald Trump says, there must be more to life than having everything. Donald, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Then Jeffrey says, nor will I, since I also know what it is. And then Trump said, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. And then Jeffrey says, yes, we do, come to think of it. And then Trump says, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? And Jeffrey says, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. And then Trump says, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. Now, you do not need me to tell you that this doesn't sound like Donald Trump. There are a lot of things in the past that have been said on behalf of individuals powerful and prevalent in political life that were definitely not said by them. For example, half of the tweets that came out of the account of Joseph R. Biden did not come from Joe Biden. And we know that because Karine Jean-Pierre's Twitter account would often tweet things that would then be deleted because some intern at the White House accidentally tweeted from the wrong account. Now, regarding Trump, Trump's very open. He's very boisterous. He used the word enigma, I believe, twice on recorded history. Once was used incorrectly when he was describing Dr. Ben Carson. He called him an enigma, and I think he meant to call him enigmatic, which is a little different. Number two, I believe he used it, again, incorrectly at some type of a social event in 2019 when he may have been trying to pronounce someone's name. So, does Donald Trump walk around calling things an enigma? No. Now, the Trump administration especially doesn't believe this is true. And President Trump is so furious that, again, now we do have the official documentation to show that the lawsuit has been filed. So, in the Southern District of Florida, plaintiff President Donald J. Trump versus Dow Jones and Company Incorporated, the Wall Street Journal, a Delaware corporation, News Corporation, Keith Rupert Murdoch, an individual, Robert Thompson, an individual, Khajia Safdar, bless you, an individual, and Joseph Palazzolo. President essentially saying, look, you didn't go through the journalistic processes that you're supposed to go through regarding some kind of an Epstein list. This obviously has defamatory problems. You're suggesting I wrote this. Other commentators out there, all the way from, like Benny Johnson to Ben Shapiro, have suggested that Trump may have had some kind of an aide write this, like, send a card, whatever, I don't care, to somebody. Rich people who have staff do so. I definitely have told producer Daniel to send messages on my behalf before. I have also impersonated producer Lou in emails on the flip side, but that's another conversation for another time. In this particular instance, what do I see coming out of these lawsuits? A settlement. I do. I see a settlement coming out of this. There's a really great point that has been made that after 4 long years of Biden, again, sending the FBI to raid Melania Trump's underwear drawer, to go after Trump, all of the indictments, all of the insanity that's gone on. If you think that this would not have leaked out to the American public before, again, given the incredible amount of attention paid to every single public facet of Jeffrey Epstein's life, yeah, I got to tell you, I think this is pretty smelly. Sounds like somebody really wanted some clicks in this particular case. We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere on the radio side of things. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, the media has had their own little special case with this, I will say. Rob Bluey, who is my boss, actually, he's the president of the Daily Signal. He decided, I guess because he's a masochist, to go up against 3 individuals on the left over at CNN. And you can see how the left tries to frame this, and it really doesn't quite work. But anywho, Check it out.
The president is forcefully pushing back on this, denying this reporting outright. He obviously wants to sue the Wall Street Journal. What's your take? Do you believe him?
Well, Caroline Leavitt went a step further, and she said that they wouldn't even show the president the image, the writing. So the Wall Street Journal apparently doesn't even have it in its possession. So I think that there are legitimate questions that the White House is raising about whether or not this is a fake document. Now, we don't know. I don't have any inside intel, but I will say this. I support Mike Johnson and what he has said about making these documents public. I think that it's important for the American people to decide and see with their own eyes what the government has in its possession. And I hope at the end of the day, the president realizes that that is what he campaigned on. That is what he will deliver.
Oh, come on. I just want to say, I mean.
Here you go, by the way. You've had, it's a very reasonable explanation. And again, not just because the guy's my boss saying, well, you know, as the president of a media outlet, if Tony Kinnett did some kind of a report where he alleges that a letter is from someone to someone else, and he doesn't even give the individual the chance to respond to the letter before it's published and, you know, agree on whether or not it is true or whether it's falsified. And then in addition, this particular Tony Kinnett guy said he didn't even have the letter. So they're writing a letter about, or they're writing an article about a letter that they don't have. First of all, our editor-in-chief, Kate Trinko, would slap me with a cast iron pan. And then Bluey would sign my pink slip. So it's a legitimate question to ask, but you know, you got to get the Karens. You can already see she's revved and ready to go.
The idea that this is a fake document coming from the Wall Street Journal and their editor, Emma Tucker, that Rupert Murdoch, whose Fox News is one of the most, the biggest supporters of this presidency.
Right, because President Trump's never been critical of Fox News before. He
would publish something that wasn't rock solid, is absolutely...
she can't think of the word.
You know,
it's absolutely, you know, ludicrous, insane, ridiculous, silly, goofball-tastic. I mean, my goodness.
Belies incredulity. And so I do not believe that this is fake. And I think it's going to cause an enormous problem for this president. Why? Because at every juncture, all fingers have pointed to Donald Trump in the Epstein matter.
We're going to upload the rest of this particular video over to the YouTube. It's a really good one. I mean, network TV hits aren't necessarily for everyone. There are a few which are diamonds in the rough. In perhaps one of the craziest moments in television history, MSNBC actually comes through as the pretty decent voice of reason here. I know, I'm shocked too.
Reporters are now, with this new revelation, going to be certain that Donald Trump was part of the deep state here, become highly suspicious of him, potentially turn on him. We are just within minutes already getting an indication that that is not the direction that this is going. Already, I can quote from Megyn Kelly on X right now, "This is the dumbest attempted hit piece I've ever seen." Then Elon Musk, someone who's been at odds with much of this group lately, has said, yeah, the letter sounds bogus. People on the right now, they're consistently messaging, sort of matching their messaging in some cases already, saying this doesn't sound like him, this isn't how he writes, it doesn't sound like him. So we're already kind of seeing them all build whatever their story, their initial defense is going to be here. And it's always really telling when you see that roll out about how they're going to do the kind of mental gymnastics that in a way we've already seen them do this week.
They said their plan and they're going to do the plan. They said what they thought, and then they're going to keep thinking it. Yeah, that's damning.
You played some of the sound at the top of this hour of the influencers trying to figure out how they explain why they so deeply care about this case.
We'll get to this in a second with the rest of the NBC clip. We'll be back in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Are now, with this new revelation, going to be certain that Donald Trump was part of the deep state here.
All right. For those who have been on the commercial break on the radio side of things, here's what's going on. MSNBC is, believe it or not, about to articulate on this particular clip that we're playing that though one member of the panel believes that Trump saying this letter is fake because Trump doesn't regularly use, well, my dear friend Jeffrey, you and I are quite the comic pair, are we not? Oh, you rascal, you you enigmatic enigma. You chip off the old Harvard block. No, Trump doesn't usually talk like this. Oh, my dear pal. Like he's Mickey Mouse. Hiya, pal. No, I don't think so. But in this particular case, they're going to say, well, it's mental gymnastics to say, I don't talk like that. But that is not the entire MSNBC panel's opinion.
So deeply care about this case, but they can still sort of attach themselves to this president and adore him, even as he angers them because he isn't giving them the thing that he promised them that he would give.
We're going to talk about that in a little bit, by the way, why some people who are mad at the Trump administration are still in large part supporting the Trump administration. I know it's very difficult for people who burn buildings down because, God forbid anyone says anything mean about Muslims for Dearborn, Michigan. But anywho.
And so I just caution people, if you think this is the thing that is now going to break this whole movement apart, I'm not sure that this is the direction that this is going in. They are probably going to find, he's going to find whatever his message is. I'm sure we're going to get more messages from the president and the White House tonight. I know Vaughn is making those phone calls in Texas. We speak right now. So they're figuring out what that is going to be. And I imagine, at least when it comes to, is Donald Trump connected to the criminal elements of this case here? Is he somehow a member of the deep state that we have been critiquing for a decade plus now?
My God, get to the point. Oh, my word. It's like reading an academic paper. I've never seen someone bounce around the point so much and just say, I don't like Trump. Come on, get to it.
I don't know.
Yeah. And Angelo, that media sphere is more fractured than it has ever been before in this moment. Antonia read us two voices. I wonder what you've been tracking. And secondarily, can we play this out a different way, where Donald Trump had told the Wall Street Journal that he was going to sue them if they ran the piece, and they would have chosen not to have run it? What would that have done to the length of this story?
I don't think it would have changed the length of the story. I mean, I think there's enough there. His own behavior is going to keep stumbling.
So you have a crew that's not essentially sold on it, but they're going to call it mental gymnastics. Okay, fair. So the story, low on merits. Very fair. You're going to do the mental gymnastics thing. Jamie Raskin, over from the congressional side of things, not really getting any better, because the Democrats, which try to really put up kind of a tough front about the Epstein business, yeah, it doesn't really hold water. But anyway, let's let Jamie Raskin give it the old college try.
State congressman could have gotten that from 21 to 25 when Democrats controlled the DOJ. Why? It was a crisis then. It's a crisis now. Why didn't Democrats call for it from 21 to 25?
So, I mean, you'd have to go back and look specifically at particular prosecutorial decisions.
This is going very poorly.
And what was taking place in terms of the other cases. So I don't know. We could try to reconstruct that record. But the point is that Donald Trump is the one who has led the crusade.
I love this so much. Oh, well, I don't know why we didn't. I guess I can't say, but you know, regarding the Epstein situation, regarding the entire narrative around it, the Democrats had a small window of opportunity to go after the Trump team on this. They completely botched it. The Wall Street Journal story, I'm sorry, guys, it's late. It's late. You missed the window on it. You did. For it to have the significant impact right now, when we have all of these documents that are breaking, that are coming out of the Trump administration regarding long-term efforts by, for example, DNI Director Tulsi Gabbard. DNI Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, pointing out that the entire Russiagate hoax came from a false report from the Obama administration, that they knew specifically the intelligence data was false, and they pushed it anyway. And then media outlets were essentially brought in and then amplified false reports over the next couple of years. And then through the 2020 election, amplified false reports about COVID. Everyone thinks COVID, you know, this hoax is, they think it's from China. Man, they're dumb. That's xenophobic. NPR, The Hill, other various outlets from far left to awkward center pushed these narratives that simply were not trustworthy. So to come out and say, well, but I mean, it's the Wall Street Journal. I mean, come on. The Wall Street Journal's actual reporting side has had some real rough moments in the last couple of years. And I'm sorry, just saying a name at me does not absolve it of sin. Now, this brings us to a couple of important points about the Biden administration cover-ups, lawsuits today. So now a third individual has pled the fifth when asked if they were told to lie about Joe Biden's health. This is a very simple question to answer. Were you asked to lie? You can just say, yes, I was asked to lie. And then, did you then lie on behalf of the president? Oh, well, they are on tape, saying things that are very much against reality. This pleading the fifth thing isn't going to work, but it is the strategy that they're going with. And it's pissing James Comer off more and more and more and more from the Oversight Committee. And as I already told you, with Justice John Roberts and Justice Amy Coney Barrett during the summer of SCOTUS, the left, moving further and further, continued getting on the nerves of the Supreme Court justices who were more moderate until they started issuing 6-3 decisions, 8-1 decisions, like they're hotcakes, slinging them out like an angry chef at Waffle House with half a cigarette butt left for the entire shift. So here's the latest Fifth Amendment pleader.
Looking out of Kentucky, he said this in a statement. It's a long statement. I'll just read one line. There is now a pattern of key Biden confidants seeking to shield themselves from criminal liability for this potential conspiracy. End quote there. We'll see who goes next. They have put out a series of videos later in the day of their witnesses pleading the fifth and sitting next to their attorneys. I would imagine Comer's committee is going to do the same thing at some point.
By the way, they can really move through a lot of this pretty quickly by eventually throwing people in inherent contempt. There's a little jail cell, as we've said before on the show, beneath the Capitol, that people can be put in until they are ready to talk. You don't just get to say, Fifth Amendment, you can't touch me. It's not ollie oxen free in freeze tag. No. I'm afraid that ain't quite how it works. And the more they continue to hold this stuff back, the more you're just going to give people like Tulsi Gabbard more time to declassify a lot of this information and release it before the American people. Because as slick as some of the Department of Justice people during those administrations think that they were, they're just not. They're just not. Because documents continue to get leaked anyway. Speaking of, America First Legal has obtained new documents conclusively proving that Attorney General Merrick Garland's infamous October 4th memo, in which he labeled concerned parents at school board meetings domestic terrorists, was politically orchestrated. President Biden was pushing for the targeting of dissenting parents at school board meetings, despite concerns from his own Department of Justice. So according to these emails, the Biden team in the White House, so whether it was one of these aides pleading the fifth, whether it was Joe Biden, whether it was Hunter Biden's crack pipe, whether it was Barack Obama, whether it was Elizabeth Warren sitting on a teepee, who knows at this point, they were ordering the Department of Justice to classify concerned parents who didn't want porn shown to their children as domestic terrorists. And members of the DOJ, members of Merrick Garland's DOJ said, are you sure you want to do this? And because the Biden team, as you remember from Kamala Brad's summer, they're just such experts at political decisions. They doubled down and said, yeah. Amazing. Incredible. Individuals should absolutely go to prison for the last one here. And I think we might have to send the radio crew over to commercial for this. So we'll continue with it over on the live stream. Catch you guys in a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. According to the latest Postal Service release on a final report, contract driver Jesse Morgan is now vindicated. Why is he vindicated? What is he vindicated of? This report from the U.S. Postal Service investigation confirms that he hauled a trailer of marked ballots from the state of New York to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in late October of 2020. Now, you recall that outlets like the Gateway Pundit, for example, reported back in 2020, election fraud whistleblowers came forward in December following the controversial election, including an individual, a Jesse Morgan, who said he witnessed the shipping of an estimated 144,000 to 288,000 completed ballots across 3 state lines on October 21st of 2020. Now, as of the U.S. Postal Service investigation finally completed, it turns out, yes, there were truckloads of ballots that went from New York to Pennsylvania right before the election that were pre-filled out. Now, the question still remains is, would that have been enough to turn Pennsylvania? But there were a lot of people who suggested that any kind of election fraud whatsoever, and again, there was already like media election interference. You have Barack Obama's tainting of the Trump administration through the false report regarding the Russian interference in elections. That's already confirmable interference. The Hunter Biden laptop scandal situation, for example. But the trucking of completed ballots across state lines, as though they were sent to some master post office in New York and then routed back to Pennsylvania. Yeah, the postal codes don't work like that, boys and girls. No. This is yet another, again, this is an official post office investigation. I don't know of a lot of political targeted postal service super investigations. The more that we continue to see individuals from bureaucratic positions who went around the backs of the American people to cover up things as though, again, they do not trust the American people to reach their own conclusions about certain instances. But instead, they, as unelected members of the fourth branch of government, decided that they would do whatever it is that they want and give you the middle finger if you asked, or, call you a domestic terrorist. Is it any wonder that the election in 2024 went the way that it did, and then Trump came in and started cleaning house? And thank God that the Supreme Court of the United States confirmed the constitutional authority of the President of the United States to fire a lot of these people. I will say it again, I don't care if it sounds mean. When I see people from the Department of Education or the State Department or the FBI getting fired, I don't care. Ha ha, learn to code. At the very least, you were complicit in the actions that completely changed the processes of justice in this country. We're going to head over to Kevin Roberts from the Heritage Foundation in a second, and then we'll be back because we didn't cover everything. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first out of 93 WIBC, and strangely enough for this interview, actually in the building for WIBC, stranger things. I'm here with Heritage Foundation President Dr. Kevin Roberts, one of the few guys allowed to, when he is north of the Mason-Dixon line, wear cowboy boots. Good to see you, sir.
No one has told me to go home yet, so I'm just going to keep wearing the boots. Good to see you too, Tony.
We'll work on that. There's a lot of momentum right now that I don't really see people discussing, and it is a little bewildering. There are things that I feel because you used to be with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. We've watched these 10-year, 20-year fights on school choice, on the pro-life movement, on deregulation through things like the EPA and building new things, of course, via the FCC. All of these major fights are seeing progress and momentum at clearing decades-long fights within just a couple of months. From a guy who used to run a large think tank and now is the president of another large think tank and organization, what's that like on kind of the inside of the industry?
Well, I think you're correct that people who are really aligned with the majority of Americans, that is to say, aligned with President Trump and Vice President Vance, have lost sight of the fact, and I'm not picking on them because I'm in this group, of the progress that's been made, not just at the federal level over the last 6 months, but especially at the state level. To your point about school choice, about a host of other issues like tackling the nefarious ESG regime. And the reason they've done so, I think, is not just because of the typical bias of the leftist media, Tony. That's not news to your audience. They've done so because there is such a yearning that's urgent for fixing America.
We only have 18 months before midterm campaigns kick in, all of that.
Exactly. And it's very normal. I'm not picking on people who think this because my wife and kids and I talk about this at dinner often. We're just so ready to take this country back, and that can't be done in 6 months. But we've got to do a better job at Heritage, us in the media, at telling the story of the progress that Americans are making.
I think it's also fair to say that, when there are, and I'm going to take this into the faith aspect, not that I'm trying to compare politics directly to answers to prayer in this case, but I will say that sometimes when I have prayers answered, how quickly I am to focus on the next crisis instead of being thankful for what is something that is no longer a problem on the radar. And again, not having to worry about, for example, on this air, the FCC coming down on us for just trying to broadcast to our audience, to our listeners. And under the Biden administration, the FCC was a totally different place. You had to walk weird tightropes. Now it's CBS who has to consider what it is they do regarding following the laws of the United States like the rest of us have to. It's kind of a weird perspective shift.
It is. And I just want to respond to your excellent comment about faith. This is a comment about faith, but also in sort of a secular setting too. It's important that we stop and explicitly state gratitude for things we've been given, obviously in our own faith journey, but even for people who maybe don't want to talk that way in the secular setting. Back to your point about all the policy progress that's been made at the state level, and now increasing amount of progress in all places, Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
To stop and say, man, thank you for this opportunity to start taking this country back. And I'm just here to tell you, you know that I don't blow smoke. Things are going really well. But our side needs to be in power in Washington, D.C. for at least another decade in order to completely fix the mess.
Well, yeah, because you don't really just want to run through projects as quickly as possible and end up breaking things in the process. Anyone who's ever hired a contractor, you understand that. Anyone who's ever worked in the trades, if you do things fast, they may not be done well. There are some long-term fixes that we want to see for American society. That's only going to take place if you put the time and effort and care that a master craftsman puts into a trade. And if we start looking at all aspects of civil service, which is supposed to be service, not bureaucratic tenure ad nauseum, then dare I be optimistic? I mean, what's going on here?
It's true. In fact, we must not be guilty of what my wife accuses me of, which is being a mostly do-it-yourselfer.
That's interesting. My wife accuses me of not picking up enough after myself.
I said, Michelle, what do you mean by that? Mostly do-it-yourself? Well, she said, Kevin, you get 90% of it done, and then you move on to the next thing.
Oh,
it's
the
really
ADHD
important.
problem, my man.
By the way, guilty as charged. She was being generous, saying 90%. That's really applicable in a weird way, Tony, to policy.
Yeah, it is.
Because there's so much to fix. And to your point about reforming the civil service, we need to get things done and done well at the federal level and the state level. For example, it's great to pass school choice bills and sign them into law. But if the implementation of those is messy, as it has been unintentionally in a few states, then that actually causes us to move backwards, and it keeps you from moving on to the next policy thing.
Loopholes, court cases.
This is why Heritage does what Heritage does, which is to guide policymakers not just on drafting legislation, but also in implementation. And I do believe, to your last point, your last question about dare you be optimistic, you absolutely should be. Everyone should be. This is just the beginning chapters of America's golden age. We're convinced of it at Heritage.
I think that there's an idea of the golden age that people believe it happens to them instead of their being a part of it. And I've always thought of the golden age as a time when individuals go out and seek and find and build. That kind of manifest destiny aspect of golden age that is inherent to American society. It's that Abrahamic dream, go to a country that I will show you. And to see Americans excited about building, when you ask people about the first Trump administration, to this day, they will tell you that there was a sense they could go out and do things and not have to look over their shoulder, not look over their shoulder financially, not look over their shoulder dealing with perhaps rampant crime in the streets, not look over their shoulder as to what's coming tomorrow on new regulations and policies. That's an understated dream of Americans, not looking over your shoulder. Reagan made it very clear that this was one of the prime facets of American excellence during the Cold War, something that the Soviets made a feature of our society. We considered an anathema.
One of the core problems we're trying to fix in the golden age is precisely what you described, and that is the sentiment by well-intentioned Americans that someone else is going to fix the problems, and thereby not recognizing that the work of elected officials in D.C. and state capitals is so much easier if we ourselves as individuals are actually participating, not just in the political process, but far more importantly and far upstream of politics, as I like to say it, the rebuilding of institutions.
Yep.
Now, it could be a really big, complex institution like reforming a university, but what I really mean by that, what we mean by that at Heritage is going back to your Rotary Club meeting, going to your homeowners association meeting. Yes, there will be people there you disagree with and maybe they frustrate you, but how do you ever reform those things if you're not present? The work of politics in some, especially in D.C., is made easier by each of us leaning into the burden a little bit. And I do see that happening a lot. I see that evidenced by the springing up of hundreds, if not thousands, of right-minded schools of all kinds of denominational stripes. I really believe Americans understand, sort of riffing off of your example of Reagan, now is the time not just for our policies to be better, but for us as Americans to realize we have to revitalize our communities as well.
And that's the key term right there, because you see everywhere from the NPR ads to the 90s to the really glossy magazine covers of the early aughts, community. It's the golden word. We got to reinvest in the community. In the 90s, right? We got to give back to the community. But it has just become kind of an ethereal MacGuffin of politics, just to say community over and over enough, and then you can run around the country and tell everyone why you need to give me money for the community. But realistically, the community isn't just the town you're in that is distributing your money to everyone else. It's the personal investment that comes from small meetings in various clubs and organizations and just getting to know the people that are working on your town. We've had so much road work recently right outside our front door, and I've hated it. But I got to know some of the guys that were doing the work, and this sounds like such a small anecdote. It's amazing how more connected you feel to the people around you in that area based on a couple of conversations.
It's really important. Barack Obama ruined a lot of things. And one of them he ruined was usage of the word community.
Yeah.
Because the word community is, for us as philosophical conservatives, our inheritance. It ultimately is neither a liberal nor a conservative word, but if you just bear with me for a moment. The point is that if you think about Edmund Burke and Alexis de Tocqueville, Russell Kirk, these are some of our godfathers of our thought of conservatism. I don't mean this in an intellectual way, in a very practical way. The reason they homed in on community before they talked about sort of a national politics is because you can never have a healthy nation state. You can never have a healthy polity, especially on the geographical scale of the United States, if we don't have hundreds and thousands of little healthy communities, which, remember, also start with healthy families.
Absolutely. We'll have to talk about healthy families the next time. Unfortunately, the FCC clock, which I'm not going to futz after being so nice to them, is ringing. So Dr. Kevin Roberts, thank you very much for stopping by. We really appreciate that.
You're the best, Tony. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate that. Radio crew, we're going to send you to the commercial break. We're continuing over on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. All right, let's do just a smidgen of some of the questions that we have got in, and then we're going to head back into the last little bit of news that we have not been able to. So in the close of the hour here, question, again, we're just trying to get a little viewer interaction here so that, every show's got to have a little viewer interaction. This is from Kathleen. Tony, what does this Genius Act that was signed today mean? In essence, it's a cryptocurrency bill that puts up a couple of regulations for what stable coins are. So stable coins are not the biggest crypto coin, that being Bitcoin. But stable coins are tied to a tangible asset, and there's just some regulations for them. Everyone who's made a really, really, really huge deal about it, I'm going to be honest with you, I despise crypto. I think it is the biggest waste of time in human history because it requires power. And society and infrastructure being incredibly fragile, and believe me, society is ridiculously fragile. That if the power goes out, how are you going to get your crypto? Now, you can make the same argument and say, well, if you have your money in the bank and it's electronic, how do you get a hold of that? Well, there is a physical bank location that I can go to and at least stand in a line to burn the building down if everything, goes to pot. This is also why I encourage people to buy silver and common rounds of ammunition, because bartering is a lot more valuable. Now, it's like a stock thing. Again, crypto is just not mine. If that's you love crypto, great. But as far as the Genius Act is concerned, I haven't paid a lot of attention to it because I don't care about it a whole lot. It seems like a great way to mix vanity and gambling. So I know that won't be particularly popular, but there you go. This next one is from Delphix. He asks, Tony, are there tiers of being a Hoosier? Yes, there are absolutely tiers of being a Hoosier. At the top of the Hoosier tiers are people who live in rural Indiana. They are the Hoosierest of Hoosiers. They are those from the movie Hoosiers. They are those who are not in the two lower tiers. The second lowest tier of Hoosiers are those who live in Indianapolis, inside 465, or the cities that suck. So there are a couple of cities in Indiana that are kind of not that great. Now, are you still a Hoosier? Yes. Will I fight for you as a Hoosier? Probably. But are you as good as the rural Hoosiers or some of the suburban Hoosiers or Hoosiers that are from really great towns? No. Now, this tier kind of fluctuates depending on where you grew up. I went to this small school when I was young in Henry County called Shenandoah. We hated everyone from Daleville, which is like a small town glued to Muncie. For those of you who aren't from Indiana, Muncie is literally Pawnee from Parks and Rec, but turned upside down. I'm not joking. If you look at the map of Pawnee, it's the map of Muncie, Indiana, flipped upside down. Yeah, facts you didn't need. The lowest tier of Hoosier is someone from the region. The region is close enough to Chicago that you just stop acting like you're from Indiana. Essentially, you work in Chicago, but you live in Indiana because you don't like Chicago's taxes or gun laws or anything else about the state of Illinois that someday we will liberate from Chicago and then push that city burning for the last time into Lake Michigan. So those are the tiers of being a Hoosier. Also, sorry. There is a fourth tier of Hoosier, and that's the author John Green, who's an absolute moron and has a weird fetish of writing about girls with cancer. So that's that aside. There are four tiers of being a Hoosier. Another comment that came from, I believe, a guy named Billy here. What's up with the Adam, and then he included a poop emoji. Nice pun. Adam Schiff mortgage fraud. Essentially, you have to pay a kind of interest rate and taxes whenever you pay a mortgage. And by listing your primary state of residence, that will change the kind of mortgage that you can apply for and the certain rates, not just the interest rate, but other rates that go into how much you have to pay. So if you say, well, my primary state of residence is Maryland, and you're a senator from California, and to be on the ballot in California as a senator, you kind of have to, live in California or, being illegal from Mexico, then yeah, that would be mortgage fraud if you're listing on separate legally binding documents that you live primarily in other states. The IRS calls that a big no-no. Letitia James is accused of the same thing in New York. She wants to spend her time in Virginia and pay Virginia rates because Governor Glenn Youngkin is objectively a better governor on the financial side than anything going on in New York, either metropolitan or upstate, or in the often forgotten Western New York. So that aside, the next question, this is just kind of a fun question here. This is from Abu Bakr. So, is Smeckledorf actually a real word? You made that up. I was describing a series of words like bamboozled the other day, the American people being bamboozled, and Smeckledorf came up. It is, in fact, a made-up word. I am not the guy who made up the word Smeckledorf, though. That actually came from season 3 of SpongeBob when he and Mr. Krabs think they killed the health inspector.
Maybe we ought to tell our guy about the phony imposter.
You loony loofah! He is the imposter! We've been duped!
Duped!
Bamboozled!
We've been Smeckledorfed!
That's not even a word, and I agree with you.
There you go. That's where that comes from. The next question. Spartan Knoll asks, is it true they're about to house illegal immigrants on military bases in Indiana? I believe Camp Atterbury, which also housed Afghani migrants, might be getting ready to be a temporary detention facility for illegal immigrants. I haven't read up on that today because, as you can see, all of the news in the entire world decided to break right open before the show. So, though said, that looks like a pretty good round of mail time questions. Appreciate it. You can throw those over to us here.
Tony.
What?
You continually are ignoring the greatest question of all. When are the people going to get the t-shirts, the mugs, the Tony Kinnett cast glasses?
I'm going to be real with you guys. I don't really think that anybody needs merch for the show. I appreciate it. It's very, very kind. If you really, really want, I've seen the comments. Okay, a TKC mug or shirt, sure, we'll look into it. I don't know what they're going to look like. I don't know if we need glasses, but sure. If, by the way, I mean, the better question here, if there's a kind of mug that you want it to be on, a kind of mug, because everyone, likes to say, oh, maybe they want a mug or a t-shirt. What do you want? Wouldn't you rather have, instead of a t-shirt, like the Tony Kinnett awkward Italian mechanic tank top? Isn't that what you'd rather have? Or the Tony Kinnett cast ill-fitting blazer? I'm just saying, the Tony Kinnett cast sugar-free pop bottle. I don't know. If there's something that you have as an idea, this isn't like a viewer engagement tactic. If there's really something here at the end of the show, you're thinking, yeah, I would get something with this. Sure, whatever. Tell us the mug style or design. Otherwise, I'm going to just give you the standard white office mug from every Hollywood movie from 1978 to 2004. What?
No, if they don't come up with something, we'll just go to Goodwill and steal all the shirts there and rebrand them. Just
okay, that actually sounds pretty great. Just go to Goodwill and then just like roll on Tony Kinnett cast, or even better, just stickers. Sharpie Tony Kinnett cast on like some heirloom mug. On the back, it's like Williams edition. Family Reunion 1993. All right, yeah, like drop shipping for poor people from the Midwest. I'm here for it.
It's a really old TV.
I ordered a T-shirt, like, well, you're getting like an old Panasonic CRTV. Television. Why was the shipping fee so expensive? Well, because you broke 3 postal workers' backs on the way to transport it across state lines to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So, that said, let's go back to a few pieces here that are rather relevant here. Again, I'm sorry, one other thing to cover regarding the report from Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard here at the end. So to recap, Tulsi Gabbard has now declassified documents that show, quote, overwhelming evidence that then President Barack Obama personally requested and then intentionally, quote, manufactured and politicized intelligence, end quote, to create a narrative that Russia was attempting to directly alter the 2016 presidential election campaign via the manipulation of voting machines and ballot practices in President Trump's favor, despite intelligence assessments from like every intelligence agency that we have. Like the Boy Scouts submitted a report and they're like, here's how to tie a 3-hand knot. Also, the Russians aren't doing anything to manipulate voting machines on a massive scale. Russia was not trying to directly alter voting machines. And why does that matter? Well, because as I remember pointing out earlier this month, CIA Director John Ratcliffe reported, quote, the 2016 CIA Director Brennan intelligence assessment, he dismissed the high-level warnings that the Clinton campaign opposition research like the Steele dossier did not meet intel collection standards and risked credibility. So CIA director at the time, Brennan, essentially took the Steele dossier at heart, knowing that it was false, and just said, you know what, we're not going to tell the media this is false. We're not going to tell people it has no credibility. We're just going to like kind of awkwardly sort of say, yeah, this should be investigated. According to page 4 of that report, 2 senior leaders of the CIA mission center responsible for Russia strongly opposed, including the dossier, in asserting that it did not even meet the most basic intelligence tradecraft standards. So, just as a side note here, basic tradecraft standards means established collection methods, techniques, and various operations for U.S. intelligence agencies and agencies in the Five Eyes: New Zealand, Canada, Australia, the UK, and the United States. The page 5, Brennan showed a preference for narrative consistency over analytical soundness. Brennan ultimately formalized his position in writing, stating, my bottom line is that I believe the information warrants inclusion in the report. So here's what happened. Brennan is compiling this report on the Russia election interference thing. And he's given the Steele dossier, which is based on false intelligence and also doesn't meet any standards. The NSA, the CIA, the FBI, etc., they say, this doesn't even look like something our interns, not even the basic recruits at Quantico, would put together. That reject from Langley wouldn't even touch this. Why would we include this? And Brennan is like, well, I want it to be true. There are a couple of active, ongoing investigations in which there are a lot of people that seem to have the idea that because they really, really, really want something to be true, they will simply glue together whatever narrative they want that fits what they're trying to say. Evidence, sound reason, standards be damned. It appears now that there is really nowhere else to run for individuals. Again, at the very least, Brennan should be criminally prosecuted. Also, at the very least, James Comey as well. Fancy Instagram posts about walking in the woods and seashells notwithstanding. So I think that'll about do it for this particular weekend. Producer Nick is not allowed to talk anymore lest he ask for news to break in the meantime. We did have a couple of other interviews that we wanted to air. Our very first interview in studio here, in the new studio here in Greenfield, with Hans von Spakovsky. It's an excellent, excellent thing. We'll air that likely tomorrow. We have a couple of others we're trying to get out as soon as possible. We'll air those either over on the podcast side. So in the description, we'll link over to the Apple podcast side of the show. That's where those will air first. So for nice, easy listening, if like me, you're trying to get caught up on Saturday chores. So that said, have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe. And remember to touch grass and be with your family. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC.